Hey all, it's Matt, your average gamer. Today we've got a lot of overpowered builds with the top 15 armor sets ranked in Elden Ring. This video will highlight the best armors while showcasing awesome builds. Before we continue though, I'm now an ambassador for G Fuel, so I want to mention real quick, if you need a little bit of extra energy to watch this video or to play Elden Ring itself, there's 20% off with my code, YOURAVERAGEGAMER in all capital letters in the description below. Feel free to check that out and get pumped up for this video. We've got a lot of armor sets and a lot of builds for this one. Also, a big shout out to Discord and Red who helped with the research for this video. I had a lot of help through Discord, so shout out to everybody on there. I'll mention some more names later in the video. First armor set at number 15 is the Malformed Dragon set. While admittedly not the best looking, it has fantastic slash resistance for the weight. It's also an entire set drop for the Draconic Tree Sentinel in Farum Azula. Now later on this list there's going to be the Banished Knight set. That is going to be a direct upgrade to this, but that one has to be farmed for. In a second here we're going to be going over this build for the lightning build and talking about the armor set. Let's go over equipment and everything you need to know. For equipment, we have the Gravelstone Seal plus 25. We have the Jellyfish Shield, 5% more than an additional seal. We have the Malformed Dragon set, Ritual Swords Talisman, Lightning Scorpion Charm, Phlox Canvas Talisman, Ritual Shield Talisman. We have the Lightning tier, the Faith tier. Let's get into stats for this one. For stats, now here we've got 70 faith, so we went for a high amount of faith to get a lot of damage, but since we want to go for good defense and we have the Jellyfish Shield and the Malformed Dragon set on, we went for 28 endurance too. And then of course we've got 60 vigor and a good amount of mind for a reasonable, well-rounded build that has a lot of defense and offense. Let's talk about the armor set. On the pro side of the armor set facts, well-rounded with high slash resistance, easy to get and no farming for, not a bad weight, and the downside, it's not the best looking and it is outclassed pretty much overall by the Banished Knight set. The next set at number 14 we are using is the Spellblade set, which is an awesome set for passive effects. The Spellblade set will boost all magic Ashes of War by 2% per piece, making it a strong choice for added damage. Here I took on the Tree Sentinels as my mage character at level 200, but I have 150 stats for you as always. The Spellblade set isn't bad for elemental resistance either, but the big takeaway here is how 8% more ash damage, particularly stacked with buffs, can give your build extreme power. Making it basically the definition of an overpowered build. We're going to be getting to equipment, stats, everything you need to know, and talking about the armor set as well. Let's start here. For equipment, we have Lucette's Glintstone Staff. I was just using that as my staff, but you can use anything here because we're mainly going with the Darkmoon Greatsword and the Jellyfish Shield. Any seal will do for buffs. We have the Spellblade set, Ritual Swords Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Magic Scorpion Charm, Godfrey Icon, and then we have the Infinite FP tier or Faith tier for buffs, and the Magic tier. Real quick, I'll show my stats at 200 for anybody that's curious, that wants all of that damage, but that's obviously at a high level. And then we're going to be going over the 150 stats and talking about the Spellblade set itself. And for the 150 stats, it's pretty well rounded. I went for 60 intelligence, and then we have 23 faith, which gets to 33 with the faith tier, so you can do faith buffs. Let's talk about the Spellblade set. Now the facts on the left are 2% damage on the Magic Ashes of War per piece, solid elemental resistances overall, it's pretty decent, easy to get, and then downsides is mainly for mages, minimal physical resistance, and not the best looking. Some people refer to it as the clown set. At number 13 we have the Cleanrot set, a very well balanced set for poise, resistances, and damage reduction. The Cleanrot set isn't something you have to build around. The weight of it is quite reasonable at a medium weight, and it has over 51 poise as well. This set has to be farmed for, however, it is a very balanced set across the board, making it a good choice for medium armor users. The build we have here is the Venomous Fang Occult Poison build, which can do a lot of damage. Mog did get to phase here because we're on New Game Plus 7 and he has around 30,000 HP, but even so, we did a lot of poison to pure damage with the Occult Venomous Fang. This is becoming a favorite claw for me to build around as it's incredibly versatile for builds. This is something you can turn into a very powerful build. You can put it in blood too to get a lot of bleed build up as well. And yeah, it's something that you can definitely do a lot of damage with. This is a powerful build for the Venomous Fang, and that's just the poison version. If you go for blood and then you go for dex and arcane, or strength and arcane, you can get a lot of damage. It's pretty quality when you go into blood. However, you can get a lot of bleed build up and the poison build up too. Yeah, you can make for really powerful builds with the Venomous Fangs. Claws in general, after that, they got that buff. I think it was 1.08 or 1.09 that gave them the buff to Claws. After that, they've been so much better, and they're really something to build around now if you want a lot of damage, a lot of successive attack damage, and then the bleed build up and such too. Claws are really, really good right now. Now, I'm not sure if I mentioned this. I'm going to mention this later in the video, but be sure to comment your favorite armor below. Don't forget to comment your favorite armor and why you like using it. For this build, we have the Venomous Fang in Occult, and then we had Royal Knight's Resolve on it. We have the Dragon Communion Seal, Cleanrot set, Kindred of Rot's Exaltation, Roddenwing Sword Insignia, Ritual Swords Talisman, Maleficent's Prosthesis, Faith Tier for buffs, Thorny Tier. Let's get into stats for this one. Now, since we're on Occult and we have that scaling for Arcane, we're going to pump Arcane up as much as we can. We got that all the way to 70, and we're getting good damage and a good amount of poison build up too. We went for 60 Vigor, 21 Mind, and 25 Endurance for a well-rounded build. Let's talk now about the Cleanrot set. And for the Cleanrot set, over 51 poise with good resistances, easy to get early, well-rounded for the weight, fits well for medium roll melee builds, and the downsides, there aren't many. The set even looks solid and is very good for medium weight melee builds. At number 12, we have Azur's set. So this one has two things going for it. First, the Helm boosts Comet Azur by around 8%. Second, it has the highest magic resistance in the game, making it a perfect set for a mage. This set can be good for PvE builds and PvP builds. It may help some against people who love low FP spells in PvP, specifically mage-related stuff. For PvE, it's a lightweight armor that has great elemental resistance, and the boost to Comet Azur is certainly noticeable as well. That 8% does factor in, especially when you factor in other buffs. Let's get new equipment. For equipment, we have Lucette's Glintstone Staff, we have the Jellyfish Shield, any seal will do. You can use the Golden Vow Ash of War. We have Azur's set with Perceptor's Trousers on. We have the Ritual Swords Talisman, Graven Skull Talisman, Magic Scorpion Charm, Graven Mask Talisman. Then we have the Infinite FP tier, the Magic tier. Let's get the stats for this one. So for stats here, this is the level 200 stats again for anybody that's using this time-stamped if they want a lot of damage off of Comet Azur. Shortly here though, in a second, I'm going to show you the 150 stats. For the 150 stats, we have 50 Vigor, 27 Mind. We've got a good amount of Intelligence at 75. You can use the Golden Vow Ash of War and Terra Magica to boost the damage. Now let's talk about Azur's set. Now for Azur's set, the facts are the good side, I guess, is the highest magic resistance in the game. It does boost Comet Azur by 8% on the helm, and the downside is it's purely a mage distance armor and doesn't have a lot of physical damage resistance. At number 11, we have the Knight set you can buy at the Round Table Hold. This is a very logical set. It's a medium, but light for the medium armor that it is, that has exactly 51 poise, can be grabbed early, and has good physical resistances overall for the weight. Be sure to comment your favorite armor below. By the way, this is great for new players, the Knight armor, as they can literally purchase this reasonable armor with 51 poise basically at the start of the game. Here we use the Bloodblade Occult Nagakiba build to do solid bleed damage as well as have ranged bleed. By the way, this is a personal favorite fun build in Elden Ring for me, and one I particularly cannot stop using. Reduvia Bloodblade is technically better and doesn't cost HP, but the fact that you can put Bloodblade on basically any weapon that you like, any medium-sized weapon, is awesome. Let's get new equipment for this one. For equipment, we have the Occult Nagakiba with Bloodblade on it, Dragon Communion Seal. We have the Knight set, Green Turtle Talisman, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Shard of Alexander, the Thorny tier, the Faith tier. Let's get into stats for this one. For stats on this build, we have an Occult setup, so we're high in Arcane. At 60 Arcane we have, and then of course we went for 60 Vigor for a well-rounded build. We have a good amount of Endurance too. We're using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength for our buffs, and a decent amount of Mind. Let's talk about the Knight set. For the Knight set, the advantages are it's a well-rounded set with 51 poise, can get at the start of the game, relatively light for what it is, and on the downside, it's lighter for physical damage reduction than you'd like in the late game stretch. It's really good for the early and mid game though. At number 10, we have the Beast Champion set. This set has a heavy weight but has great slash resistance, and overall it's a very well-rounded armor. It's very, very reasonable for the amount of weight. Now it is on the heavy side, and it does have a good amount of robustness too, but overall a solid, well-rounded armor. It has a cool look to it too, and it particularly fits well with bonk weapons. I think it looks really good with some of the heavier weapons in the game. Here though, I wanted to show a quick, slightly less powerful Black Flame build for those struggling with Commander Niall. I hear that Niall caused some players trouble and frequently hear that he's a difficult fight and that some of you guys are struggling with him. Here's my best advice for this one. Go for the stronger knight on the right first. He's the most likely one to hit you. Once he's down, don't even look at Niall. Instead, focus on knight number 2. Once he's down, there's a very easier trick with Commander here, as his AI has an attack it likes to use with ranged attacks. I've beaten him with Kukri using this same method. Keep a medium range and keep throwing whatever you choose at him. For me, I'm using Black Flame. He'll continue to go up in the air for a slam down, which has a very generous dodge window. Do not roll away, but into it or at the side. It does have a good dodge window here, and you can keep baiting this attack. Yeah, if you do this and bait him, it's going to end up making up about 80% of the fight. As long as you know how to dodge that one single move, it's over for Commander Niall. He's very easy with this method of fighting. This particular strategy works really well on Commander Niall, as his AI seems to read the same thing over and over again and give you a very generous dodge window. And since we have a little bit of time to kill here, I want to mention real quick, if you followed me up until this point, definitely be sure to sub if you want basically weekly Elden Ring build videos that are going to keep the game interesting and expand your knowledge on the game. I'm learning as we go too, so it's really fun to kind of learn as I go and make these videos, especially since I didn't really know much about armor. Up until now, I know a lot more, and yeah, it's been really fun, so be sure to hit that subscribe button. You're not going to want to miss out. And don't forget to comment your favorite armor too, and why you use that armor, and whether you use it for PvP or PvE, and how effective you think it is for whatever kind of build, like type of build you're doing. I'm curious to see what your favorite armors are in the game. And here in a second, we're showing off again the Beast Champion set, an awesome well-rounded armor set that's a little on the heavier side. We're going to go over equipment for this Black Flame build and setup. For my Beast Champion Black Flame build that we have here, we have 2 Godslayer seals to boost the Black Flame. We have the Beast Champion set, Ritual Swords Talisman, Fire Scorpion Charm. We have Phlox Canvas Talisman, Godfrey Icon, Fire Tier, and I think we have the Faith Tier as well. Let's get into stats. By the way, we're using Black Flame as our main incantation here, and then we have Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength as our buffs. We have 60 Vigor, 60 Faith, 70 with the Faith tier, a good amount of Endurance, and 23 Mind. Let's talk about the Beast Champion set. The facts and the good about it: it's high poise, well-rounded armor for good physical and elemental resistances. The downsides: it's slightly heavy. It's outclassed by the #1 armor in this video in terms of weight. At number 9, we have Lionel's set. This is a tanky armor that is beaten out by the Omen set and Bullgoat set, which we're going to get to later in this video for physical resistance, but it's very easy to grab in the capital. You can get it in a small church not far from the Avenue Balcony, Site of Grace. This armor is particularly great against pierce damage, one of the best in the game, which can help you in PvP and as well as PvE. Here we took on the Fire Giant on New Game Plus 7 with the Bubble build. This uses the overpowered Envoy's Longhorn to crush the larger bosses in Elden Ring, one of my favorite builds and a ton of fun to use too. Our armor here should keep us alive, and this one does end up going down to the wire. During the Fire Giant's Phase 2, it's best to just pressure him. I'm going to talk about that as we get to Phase 2 in terms of what you can do for Fire Giant to make that quick, and the Envoy's Longhorn is actually a solution for the Fire Giant. It's really powerful against him because he is such a large target, and he will get hit with all of the bubbles from it. If you're ever struggling with the larger targets in the game, this is definitely something that you gotta try out because it's gonna make your life a lot easier. It's that good. As stupid as the bubbles can look sometimes, the fact that they do poise damage, by the way, the fact that the bubbles do poise damage on top of the crazy amount of damage they can do to larger targets, it ends up making for an insane Faith build. Let's get to Phase 2 here. Now, as I mentioned, during the Fire Giant's Phase 2, it's best to just pressure him, as going after him can sometimes greatly pay off, especially since we're rocking decent armor. Even on New Game Plus 7, where bosses hit significantly harder, we can play semi-risky. Elden Ring at certain times can favor an aggressive playstyle, and for me, Fire Giant Phase 2 is one of those times. The longer he's around for, the more likely he is to do the bigger fire attacks that become increasingly hard to avoid. You get Torrent during this fight, but for me, I never use it much, only to avoid the bigger fire attacks he has. The Envoy's Longhorn can take him down fairly easily and quickly as well. Yeah, you don't really need to go on horseback for this fight. You can do a lot of damage with the Envoy's Longhorn. Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike works really well if you're a Faith build. Both those two are options for you to take down the Fire Giant, and you can play it aggressively, basically stop him from doing any of the more powerful fire attacks, take him down quickly, and get this fight over with. Phase 2 is one you definitely want to speed up. Let's get into equipment. For equipment, we have the Envoy's Longhorn plus 10, we have the Dragon Communion Seal, we have Lionel set on, we have the Sacred Scorpion Charm, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, Ritual Swords Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Fate Tier, Holy Tier. Let's get into stats for this one. Now, for stats here, by the way, we're using Golden Vow and Halashaburi. We have 60 Vigor, 60 Faith, and then we have a ton of Endurance. By the way, you only need 40 Endurance. You can put 10 back into Faith. I just didn't want to respec, ended up using the same setup for the Bullgoat set. Now let's talk about Lionel's set. Lionel's set has incredibly high pierce resistance, heavy and easy to get. It has incredibly high poise as well. On the downsides, it's heavy armor in general. You need a fair bit of endurance to use this armor, but all around solid. At number 8, we have the Banished Knight set, which is a direct upgrade to the Malformed Dragon set. This has around the same weight while having better all-around stats, but it has to be farmed for. That being said, it's one of the best early armors for physical resistance and poise in Elden Ring. This is definitely one you could build an early game tank around for sure. Here we're using Dragon Incantations on Gideon, effectively stun locking him to do massive damage with Glintstone Breath. He truly is the easiest main boss in Elden Ring. Maybe one day he'll get the buff he likely needs. Yeah, Gideon is just too easy sometimes, especially when he just stands there with his monologue for a really long time, and Dragon Incantations can certainly stun lock him and prevent him from doing much. This is definitely a good method, by the way, for absolutely crushing Gideon if you want to destroy him fast. You can also hit him with a hard bonk weapon too and destroy him that way. Overall though, in my opinion, easiest main game boss. Let's talk about equipment for this one. For equipment, we have 2 Dragon Communion Seals, but you can use the Jellyfish Shield in the offhand if you want to. And then we have the Banished Knight set on, Ritual Swords Talisman, Magic Scorpion Charm, Phlox Canvas Talisman, Roar Medallion, and then we have the Magic Tier and the Fire Tier if you want to use the Fire Breath one too. And then let's get into stats. For stats, we have a good amount of Faith and Arcane at 45 each. That's the soft cap, by the way, for this build and setup because the Dragon Communion Seal scales really well with 45 Faith and 45 Arcane. We have 50 Vigor because we're a ranged attacker, a good amount of Mind, and a little bit of Endurance for this build. You don't need too much. Let's talk about the Banished Knight set. And the facts about this set can get super early, a direct upgrade from the Malformed Dragon set, well-rounded and good poise. On the downsides, have to farm for each piece, slightly heavy, although not too bad overall, and you can definitely grab this one early, it's solid. At number 7, we have the Veteren set, an awesome set you can buy at the Round Table Hold after beating Commander Niall. This set also has high slash resistance and high poise, making it an easy set to buy and rock for physical resistance. Its weight is reasonable for what it offers, easily making the top 10 armors on this list. Here we've used a fire build against Radahn to get in some great damage from a powerful Faith build. Burno Flame and Giant's Flame Take Thee are among my favorites, and Radagon's 0 fire resistance certainly makes them a solid choice overall. Having good armor helps too, as the Veteren set is a well-rounded and reasonable armor for both physical resistance and a good amount of poise. This is actually a really solid set to take on the late game stretch, so if you're looking for something towards the late game that's really good, you happen to have the endurance to deal with the weight for this one. It's not too heavy, but it is a little heavy. This is a very solid late game set. Let's get into equipment for this build and setup. For equipment, we have 2 Giant Seals. We're using Giant's Flame, Take Thee, and Burno Flame. We have the Veteren set. We have the Great Jar's Arsenal. We have Godfrey Icon, Ritual Swords Talisman, Fire Scorpion Charm, Fire Tier, Faith Tier. Let's get into stats. For stats, once again, we did a Faith build and setup. We have a good amount of Endurance here, a decent amount of Mind, and we have 60 Vigor as well for a well-rounded build and setup using Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength, Giant's Flame, Take Thee, and Burno Flame. Now let's talk about the Veteren set. Now the solid facts about the Veteren set. It has high poise, great against slash damage, solid physical resistance for the weight, and on the downsides, it's slightly heavy, and you get it relatively late in your journey at Mountaintops of the Giants, so that's one of the downsides, but overall a very well-rounded good set. At number 6, we have Radahn's set, which is basically tied with the Veteren set for me. This one has a lot of robustness while also having a well-rounded physical resistance for the weight. You can also get the set early by defeating General Radahn and Prelate, something you can do after getting to the Altless Plateau. Here we use the Magma Worm Scalesword with Giant's Flame Take Thee to fight this tree avatar, and it couldn't be more fun mixing in fire builds. I really do enjoy fire builds. We've got good armor too, so we can play a little aggressive here and quickly end up victorious over one of the easier bosses in this video. By the way, I tried my best to mix in different bosses of all sorts for the 15 builds and armors that are on this list. I mixed up everything to kind of keep it interesting and to give it a variety. I also chose to take on a couple quicker bosses to mix in with the longer main bosses to make the video go at a reasonable pace as well. Let's get into equipment for this one. For equipment, we have the Magma Worm Scalesword, we have a Giant Seal, we have Radahn set on, of course, Shard of Alexander, Fire Scorpion Charm, Ritual Swords Talisman, Great Jar's Arsenal, we have the Fire tier and Faith tier. Let's get into stats. For stats, we have 60 Vigor, again, we have 40 Faith, 50 Strength, this is a Strength and Faith build by the way, and then we have 30 Endurance and a fairly decent amount of Mind as well for a well-rounded build for the Magma Worm Scalesword that does good poison fire damage. Let's talk about Radahn's set. On the plus side, I guess this should have been the plus side, it can be gotten early on, slightly more rounded than the Veteren set, good for the weight. The downsides is this armor is very commonly worn, it's very, very common in Elden Ring, and for melee builds, it can be a lot of weight if you want to run a strength build. At number 5, we have the Crucible Tree set, which has the highest holy resistance of any armor in Elden Ring. The tree set is straight up better than the axe set too, making the latter more for looks. Here we've used Ordovis' Greatsword with the tree set to get awesome poise damage while having some defense as well. This ended in a relatively quick fight against probably the easiest boss in this list overall, this one was, but I threw this in kind of for time management. But yeah, the tree set is better than the axe set and it has very high holy resistance. Let's get into equipment for this build. For equipment, we have Ordovis' Greatsword plus 10. We're using the Gravelstone Seal, but mainly for buffs. We have the Crucible Tree set. We have the Shard of Alexander, the Godfrey icon because it is chargeable, Ritual Swords Talisman, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, Stone Barb Crack tier, and then we have the Faith tier. Let's get into stats. For stats is a Strength and Faith build, but it definitely leans more towards Strength, given the weapon has an A in Strength scaling, but we've got 50 Strength, 40 Faith, and we went for 60 Vigor for a well-rounded build. Let's talk about the Crucible Tree set. Now the facts about this set: highest holy resistance of any armor, better than axe set, extremely well rounded with high poise, and my opinions on the downside, can be challenging to obtain in deep root depths, and it's relatively, I guess it could be considered late game, but a little challenging to grab. At number 4 we have the Fire Prelate set, which has the highest fire resistance in the game, making it a solid choice for this list. This set is incredibly weighty though, and while it has high poise and physical resistance, be aware that you have to build around this armor a bit in terms of endurance. For this one, I went Blasphemous to get a kind of heal and tank build, around 50 to 60 faith and a lot of endurance to make a tanky build that can also dish out damage while healing, as I just mentioned. Godfrey on New Game Plus 7 has the highest physical damage output of any boss per hit, so it is still best to be careful here and to kind of tread lightly, although we can play a little bit aggressive. The ability to heal with the Blasphemous Blade can make this fight a lot simpler. We've got reasonable defense and we can go battle with confidence because the Blasphemous Blade has that range, and then we're healing back on every hit while also rocking decent armor. And really good armor in terms of fire resistance. The fire resistance on this is actually so good that it's really good against the Fire Giant and Rykard, so if you're ever having trouble with either one of those bosses, definitely consider this armor. It's not too bad to farm for in terms of the drops, and then once you have a full set, you have an armor that has very high fire resistance. Now for Godfrey Phase 2, it's best to watch his attack patterns. One grapple on max scaling can take out 60 plus vigor worth of HP easily, so keep your distance and use ranged attacks to avoid those grabs. This fight is on the easier side with the Blasphemous Blade build because he, like Radahn, Malenia, and Morgott, has 0 fire resistance. Yeah, it's a really good thing to know when it comes to this boss fight, and pretty much all of the boss fights that I mentioned as far as Radahn, Malenia, Morgott, etc., because of the fact that they take so much fire damage. They're neutral to fire essentially, which in my opinion is basically weak to, because they're taking the full complement of an elemental damage type. And we do get some excitement at the end here, but don't worry, we're going to be able to take down Godfrey and Horaloo. It's not going to be too much of an issue with the Blasphemous Blade after all, given the amount of range we have as well, and we didn't even have to heal that much because we're constantly healing back in what essentially amounts to a tank and heal build. And down goes Godfrey to the Fire Prelate set, and then we have the Blasphemous Blade, as we've been talking about too, for an awesome tank and heal build. This is a very weighty set, but solid overall, and we're going to get into equipment, stats, everything you need to know for this one. For equipment, we have the Blasphemous Blade plus 10. I was using the Erdtree Seal because it's weightless. We have Decent Faith, the Fire Prelate set, Great Jar's Arsenal, Erdtree's Favorite plus 2, Ritual Swords Talisman, Shard of Alexander, the Fire tier, the Defense tier because we're tanking a lot here. Let's get into stats for this one. Alright, another heavy set here. We're using Great Jar's Arsenal, so we have 36 Endurance, we have 60 Vigor, 55 Faith. Overall, a well-rounded build for the Blasphemous Blade to get enough damage to tank and heal while also rocking a relatively heavy armor. And we are going to talk now about the Fire Prelate set. Now for this set, it has the highest fire resistance in the game, heavy with high poise, good physical resistance overall. The downside has to be farmed for. It's very heavy and most effective against bosses like the Fire Giant and Ricard for this one. At number 3, we have the Omen set, which has good vitality and solid physical and elemental resistances. This is one of the more well-rounded heavy armor sets in the game and can be grabbed beneath the capital or by completing Dung Eater's questline. For this, we threw in a goofy yet fun Fire Sword build on the Bandit Curved Sword. This is one that I use rather frequently, but I really enjoy it. This will allow us to use 2 Faith Fire Swords for massive jumping damage while also having good defense. This isn't the best looking set, but it still does look cool with 2 swords on fire for this build. Flaming Strike is really cool and can add a lot of damage in Flame Art for Faith builds, giving you a varied build option where you can throw in incantations too if you like. At the end here, I play aggressive because we have a good armor set and solid damage output. The Omen set is certainly solid for its weight and extremely well-rounded stat-wise. This is one of the better heavy sets in the game, and that's why it makes number 3 on this list. And the Godskin Apostle there, we're just going to take on with the jump attacks and the fire damage, and that's enough there to take him down because we're building on successive attacks. And then we have the Koal Talisman as well to fit the build and overall theme of basically going with a Faith and Fire setup yet again. I know I use that for a lot of these builds, but I really enjoy Faith builds and the variety they have. Let's get into equipment. For equipment, we have 2 Bandit Curved Swords in Flame Art with Flaming Strike. We have the Omen set on Claw Talisman, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, Shard of Alexander. We have the Thorny tier, Fire tier. Let's get into stats for this one. And for stats, by the way, you only need about 40 endurance if you don't want to have to use the Great Jar's Arsenal for this build and setup. I just didn't respect for the heavy sets. I decided to use all of them based on the Bullgoat set so I could save larval tiers. So you can put that 10 back into Faith. We have 60 Vigor, and then you would have 60 Faith and 40 Endurance. Let's talk about the Omen set. And the facts about this one, it's really only outclassed by the Bullgoat set for the weight. It's well-rounded, high poise, and great resistances, and on the downsides, it's heavy, and it's not the best looking set in Elden Ring. That's just my opinion. I don't really think it's a great looking set. At number 2, we have the Bullgoat set, an extremely heavy armor with massive physical resistance. This armor is great for defense, but you will have to build around it some with a lot of endurance for this one because it's a very, very heavyweight armor set. This is one of the best sets, pretty much the best set in the game for a pure tank build, and you're going to see why that is on screen here. We're using Prayerful Strike, by the way, and Sacred Affinity, and we're able to basically not get knocked down because of our insanely high poise and constantly heal back, making us pretty much invincible. If you want, you can add Boiled Crab or Black Flame's Protection and the defense tier as well as Golden Vow. This can make for a powerful defender build that can always heal and can withstand longer fights. Dragon Crest, of course, can also be added here for more damage reduction as well. Interestingly enough about this clip, it ended up being one of my favorite clips because I've always been trying to tell people how good Prayerful Strike is. After I was told about it in my Discord, I forget who originally told me how good it was, and then turns out it's amazing. It heals back a ton, and it's really the melee up-close version of the Blasphemous Blade. It's pretty ridiculous, and we have such good poise here that we can continue to heal and do posture damage and damage in general. If you're quick enough, by the way, you can throw a Dur on a dagger, and that'll give you an insane amount of physical resistance. If you stack everything together, it's going to be like around 90. It's basically going to give you the bubble for 3 seconds. It's insane how much physical resistance you can get. I think it might be 80 something, maybe close to 90. You stack everything together, but it is amazing how much that works in terms of being able to take hits. Let's get into equipment for this one. For equipment, we have the Great Stars, Prayerful Strike, and Sacred Affinity, Endure on a Dagger. Any seal will do. I was using a weightless one. We have the Bullgoat set, Erdtree's Favorite plus 2, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, Ritual Swords Talisman, Shard of Alexander. And then we have the Defense tier, Holy tier. Let's get into stats for this one. For stats, by the way, we're using Golden Vow and Black Flames protection. You can use Boiled Crab as well, but that doesn't stack. And then we have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, a ton of Endurance at 50 for this build, and then 50 Faith as well to dish out a good amount of damage while also being able to take a bunch of hits too. Let's talk about the Bullgoat set. And the facts about this set: the highest physical resistance in Elden Ring, amazing for tank builds, easy mode. Downsides is it's so heavy you'll be building around it. Endurance needs to be at least 40 for a solid setup and might need Great Jar's Arsenal. And number 1, we have the best armor set in Elden Ring for the weight, and one of my favorites, the Tree Sentinel set. This armor is fantastic for resistances across the board while also not being ridiculously heavy like the Bullgoat set. In fact, for the weight difference, it's statistically not far behind the Bullgoat set, making it such an obvious choice to build around. And yes, the Bullgoat set has a lot more poise, but if you're looking to get past that poise threshold of 51 and you're not really worried about the next one, which I believe is around 101, I don't really do a lot of PvP or haven't done much PvP lately, but anyways, if you're going past 51, then for the physical damage reduction part of the armor, it's actually close, the Tree Sentinel set, to the Bullgoat set at a lot less weight. For here, by the way, I'm using the Blasphemous Blade build again here, except we're going for more damage because we only need 30 to 35 endurance and no Great Jar's Arsenal. The damage we can do in our physical and elemental resistance are at their best with the Tree Sentinel set. Although this set is rather hard to obtain, it is well worth it. Out of all the research and testing I did for this video, as well as the help in the Discord, I'm going to thank you guys at the end again. By the way, this is the most well-rounded set in the entire game of Elden Ring to build around. Rock this set for easy mode while also having style and fun too. This one is definitely a winner. Alright, now we're going to get into equipment for the best build on here and the best setup. We have the Blasphemous Blade plus 10, the Erdtree Seal to fit the theme, and because we have a good amount of Fate, the Tree Sentinel set, Erdtree's Favorite plus 2, Fire Scorpion Charm, Ritual Swords Talisman, Shard of Alexander. We have the Fire tier, Fate tier. Let's get into stats. For stats on this incredibly well-rounded setup, we have 60 Vigor, we have 60 Faith, we're at only 16 Strength because we're using the Ash of War mainly, and then we have 35 Endurance and a good amount of Mind at 25 too, using Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength. Let's talk about the best set. And this set, highest physical resistance and poise per weight in the game, the most well-rounded set there is. It looks good too, and the downsides, honestly, if you're going for the best armor, there is none. It's slightly heavy, I guess. Thanks for watching this one. I appreciate all of you who stuck around for this video. As I know, there was a lot to talk about and it was a little bit on the longer side. I really enjoyed covering the armor sets, and I'm curious on your thoughts below, as well as to what armor set you're currently using. Thank you to Red, Melody, and Caustic on Discord, and everyone else who helped with the research on this one. Be sure to sub for more Elden Ring content, and as always, have a great day and have a wonderful week.